Hello and welcome to CineMaine, where we look at films that are connected to Maine, whether they be set in Maine, filmed in Maine, or have any other loose connections to the state of Maine. Back when I reviewed The Iron Giant last year, I said I would review an actual DC Comics film that was connected to Maine the next time a new DC movie came out. And since the star of this film just so happens to be playing another DC Comics character in the upcoming Supergirl movie, that weirdly makes this the perfect time for me to review the film named after the first DC character he's played, Aquaman. Directed as well as partially written by the creator of Saw, Insidious, and The Conjuring, James Wan. The film's protagonist, Arthur Curry, is a half-human, half-Atlantean who is called upon by Zebellian King Nereus' daughter Mera to stop his half-brother, or Marius, from trying to destroy the surface world, all while also being pursued by David Kane, aka Black Manta.
That's a stupid name!
As I was saying, while in the midst of pursuit from David Kane, who's trying to avenge his father's death, which he blames Arthur for. In a scene that kind of feels like it's ripping off this scene from Batman Begins.
I won't kill you, but I don't have to save you.
It's also worth noting that Arthur still has some unresolved feelings regarding the disappearance and alleged death of his Atlantean mother, Queen Atlanna, who returned to Atlantis shortly after his birth after being pursued by Atlantean soldiers in an effort to protect her son and his father, Tom. For the record, I have no idea why King Kahekili is Chief Kaiana's father in this. He just is, I guess. Anyway, the biggest thing that connects this film to Maine, believe it or not, is that it's based off of a comic book character that is canonically a Mainer. Yep, the highest grossing DC Comics film of all time is about a Mainer. I never would have expected that. In the New 52 era comics, his hometown is a coastal town in Maine known as Amnesty Bay, having been raised there by his father, Tom, at a lighthouse. This is something that the movie includes from the source material. Amnesty Bay is of course a fictional place, like a lot of cities in the DC universe, but I have to admit the filmmakers did a good job making Amnesty Bay look and feel like a believable coastal Maine town, both with this overview shot and also this bar that Arthur and Tom stop for a drink at after he comes back from defeating a gang of pirates who hijacked a submarine earlier. This is definitely a very coastal Maine thing to do, and this ends up being a pretty funny scene in and of itself. A bunch of rugged bikers confront Arthur while he's trying to have a drink with his dad, and you think these guys are gonna be cliche Stephen King bullies who try to give him a hard time. But then one of them pulls out his phone with a pink case on it and is all like, "Dude, we're huge fans of yours, can we get a selfie with you?" I remember this getting a pretty big laugh in the theater, along with Arthur's confused reaction before inevitably partying with these guys. There are obviously other locations that the characters go to throughout the film aside from Maine, though. Arthur discovers his abilities to communicate with sea creatures doing a school field trip as a child. An out-of-state field trip to the Boston Aquarium in Massachusetts. Though it's not Maine, it is still New England. And I myself did go to this place when I was in high school, so I got quite a kick out of this. The other parts of this film that take place on land are the Western Sahara and the Italian island of Sicily. Despite the film being set in all these different locations throughout, most of the movie was filmed on sound stages at Village Roadshow Studios in Australia, along with the Amnesty Bay parts being listed on IMDb as being filmed at Queensland's Main Beach? You know, because Maine and Australia have a lot in common. Weird, because Newfoundland is also listed as one of the filming locations. I could have sworn that's where they would have filmed the main scenes. Well, either way, they did a pretty good job at giving Amnesty Bay a Maine aesthetic. The only thing I can think of that they got wrong is this cliff right here. There is no cliff in Maine that's this high, not even the cliffs where they shot Shutter Island. It's worth noting that although Arthur's mom is forced to come back to Atlantis, she makes sure that her advisor, Nuidus Vulko, trains Arthur to become a skilled fighter. I point this out because I feel like Vulko could have easily trained Arthur in the Gulf of Maine. Speaking of this character, there's one more connection to Maine through his actor, Willem Dafoe. Something I epically failed to mention when I reviewed The Boondock Saints, which he was also in. Despite originally being from Wisconsin, he does own a home down over at Thompson Lake. He likes to vacation here in the winter and occasionally the summer, but mostly the winter due to his love of ice fishing. I've even been told about this show from the early 90s called Fishing with John, which did an episode with Willem where the show's host, John Loring, went ice fishing with him in Maine. I've also heard it reported that Willem's son Jack lives in Maine full-time while working as an environmental activist. You could also argue that the traffic going into Atlantis is a lot like Portland traffic on a Saturday.
Thank you.
I'm gonna give this film 3 chickadees out of 5. I'd say about maybe a quarter to a third of this movie takes place in Maine, and nothing was filmed in Maine either. But they do a good job representing what Maine is like anyway, so I can't complain. Defoe's role in the film itself is pretty prominent, and he does a good job like always. Quite the contrast to his role in Marvel. He's something of an Atlantean himself. In fact, I like a lot of the supporting cast of this film. It was cool seeing Dolph Lundgren play Mara's father, and though Boba Fett himself, Temuera Morrison, is for the most part just in the first act before showing up to reunite with his lost loved one at the end, he's also quite likable and has great chemistry with Momoa. You really buy that these two are a father and son who have known each other their whole lives and do get along pretty well. While Nicole Kidman isn't in the film very much either, she still does a good job. I like that her character in this isn't a repeat of her role in Batman Forever. Though it is weird that she was cast as not just Arthur's mom, but also the mother of his half-brother Orm. Considering that she's definitely got more of a sibling age gap with both Momoa and especially Patrick Wilson. It would be like if my son was played by Percy Jackson's actor. Wait a minute. Both of these characters have the same powers. I feel stupid for not having noticed that earlier. Speaking of Aquaman himself though, Jason Momoa does a great job in this role. The filmmakers were smart not to portray this character in a manner similar to how he'd been stereotyped in the past. Let's face it, this character's been the butt of so many jokes for many years, and I can imagine that made it harder to figure out how to adapt this character in a manner that would actually work on the big screen. Going with a less traditional take may have been the best call. This is a role that Momoa has kind of been typecast as. The macho buff dude who likes to kick ass but can still have fun telling funny one-liners, but still being very believable when he needs to be serious. To be fair though, it's the kind of role Momoa pulls off beautifully. It probably helps that while his character is known for communicating with sea creatures, he only does this a couple of times throughout the entire film. He also doesn't get the suit that he's known for wearing until the 2-hour mark. You'd think that would be a ripoff, but it weirdly makes it easier to take this material more seriously, and even when he does get the suit, it actually doesn't look quite as ridiculous as one would expect. Even seeing him use the trident during the climax is kind of fun.
And always twirling, twirling, twirling towards freedom.
I also like that while his character does have mommy issues, which makes sense since she did leave him and his dad when he was a baby, it's nice that when he does eventually reunite with her, he actually isn't upset with her. He does blame himself for why all of the bad stuff that happened to her did happen, but she reassures him that it's not his fault. It's actually a very touching scene. This movie had some cool cameos in it too. I noticed that this green fish was voiced by Djimon Hounsou just 5 months before playing the wizard in Shazam. One of James Wan's frequent collaborators, Lee Wanell, is flying the plane over the Sahara that Mara jumps out of. One of the dwarves from The Hobbit apparently plays King Atlan. And speaking of Middle-earth, John Rhys Davies shows up as a killer crab during the climax.
You can take my army, you soft-bellied slug!
And to think this is not the only sea creature he's voiced.
I have checks with little poodles on them.
Probably the strangest cameo has to be Julie Andrews as this mythical sea creature guarding the trident that eventually belongs to Aquaman. That is such a bizarre choice, and yet it's surprisingly kinda perfect. I guess late 2010s comic book films really had a thing for trying to make Mary Poppins seem epic.
I'm Mary Poppins, y'all!
I like the way Arthur stands up to the Kara then after he's told he's unworthy. His response has the same energy as when Conan prayed to Crom in that movie. Momoa's more Conan-like here than when he actually played Conan.
And if that's not good enough, then screw you.
And if you do not listen, then the hell with you.
While the movie made it easier for me to take Aquaman seriously, they kind of failed at doing the same thing for the villains. The most obvious one being the aforementioned Black Manta. Look, don't get me wrong, I'm sure this is a comic-accurate representation of the character, but I'm sorry, I just cannot take this guy seriously. I have no qualms with Yahya Abdul-Mateen II. I haven't seen that Marvel show he did recently, but I've heard a lot of good things about it, and I'm sure he's really good in it. But not only is this character's name really stupid, but look at this fucking helmet, man. I'm sorry, this is one of the funniest designs I've ever seen in any comic book movie. Are we really supposed to take this seriously? I see this and I think to myself,
You stupid.
I don't know, maybe it's Robot Chicken's fault that my introduction to this character was through the Arkham Redemption, but I just can't take this guy seriously when he's wearing that. He looks so fucking funny.
Make me want to merge without looking.
Then there's the film's main villain. No, actually, Orm is not a Mainer. Sorry. I should say primary villain. While I've liked Patrick Wilson in a lot of James Wan's other films, in this one he's fine, I guess? Yeah, he still turns in a good performance, but his character isn't awful, just not really that interesting. His motivation for why he wants to invade the surface makes sense, considering that he doesn't like how they've been treating the oceans, and yeah, I'll give the movie major props for not hitting us over the head with this commentary and being preachy about it, like a certain boring James Cameron movie did recently. Sorry, Entourage fans. But with that said, he still feels like the kind of villain we've already seen in plenty of other big blockbuster movies. Nothing really that new is done to make us interested in him, aside from the fact that he's Arthur's half-brother. Other than that, this character feels a little derivative. In fact, there are admittedly other parts of this film that feel a little derivative too. I remember when this first came out, a bunch of people tried to claim it was ripping off Black Panther. While I can't say I agree with that, I will admit there is one parallel I noticed between the two films upon rewatch. One film has a villain who wants to take the throne of a kingdom away from its protagonist, and in this one the hero's goal is to take the throne away from the villain. Okay, it is interesting that they turned the tables on that one at least. Some of the exposition beats feel a little similar to Atlantis: The Lost Empire, but I guess I shouldn't be surprised. They both deal with Atlantis. There's also one point in the film where Aquaman and Mera have to go on a quest and retrieve a bunch of clues in order to figure out where the coordinates to where the Trident of Atlan is located, and while this part of the movie is still fun, you could argue the movie turns into Mediterranean National Treasure for a little bit. There's also the fact that we're supposed to buy Aquaman and Mera getting together by the end. The movie really makes this obvious when they stop at Sicily during their quest. They take a break just to admire the beauty of life like something out of a Hallmark movie. I'll admit there's a decent Roy Orbison song played here, and I did get a kick out of Mera sharing Homer's secret shame. It's kind of a cute scene, I guess. But before this, the movie tries shipping them by using that lame rom-com-y cliche of making it obvious that they'll get together by the end because of how they argue. Because we totally haven't seen that a million times already. Mera even gets kinda mean towards Arthur at one point.
Your brother is clearly an imbecile.
Don't go eat some flowers.
My secret shame.
Oh, and this is definitely a nitpick, but if Arthur and Mera are supposed to be underground, how come there's so much lighting here?
I don't know.
The way they uncover a holographic message in this place kind of feels like it's borrowing from The Fifth Element a little bit too. I also noticed at one point early on in the film, Arthur's father nearly drowns in a tsunami that Orm caused. Mera, to her credit, saves his life by waterbending. Actually, come to think of it, Mera's mom isn't in this film anywhere. I forget, do they ever mention her? Is her mom dead?
Will you please shut your air hole?
Ugh, fine. Well, getting back to the good stuff, I'll give this film major props that Mera is a love interest in a comic book movie that never needs to be rescued. She's shown to be quite powerful herself and is able to carry her own in a fight scene. I particularly like this one bit where she breaks a guy's helmet off and then he's all like,
It's down there somewhere. Let me take another look. Oh.
And in that same fight, she takes the rest of these guys out by becoming a wine bender.
What a waste of good wine.
So yeah, despite some derivative elements, the film does plenty of creative things like this that help it stand on its own 2 feet. For starters, I got quite a kick out of certain horror elements that were included in this film. I guess I shouldn't be surprised considering who directed this, but I was impressed that the film was a bit gorier than I remembered it being. The red lighting in this part of the film leads to some very cool looking shots too. I particularly dug the scene where Mera fights an underwater xenomorph. A xenomorph, if you will. I also got a kick out of these literal killer crabs during the climax. In fact, the visuals as a whole in this film are astounding. It is, of course, all done with CGI, but the VFX artist still did an amazing job. Certain plot elements may feel derivative, but the Atlantean world itself still looks and feels very unique. And any visual similarities to other films, like say, the Star Wars prequels, feel less like they're heavily borrowing from them and are more taking influence from them. I particularly dug the hidden sea area that Queen Atlanna was staying at. It kinda reminded me of Hollow-Earth from the newer Godzilla films. Though I have to wonder if this is where she's been this whole time, then where's King Kong?
I don't know that!
Despite some outfits looking silly, some of the Atlantean armor looks really cool. Particularly that of the Atlantean soldiers that go after Queen Atlanna at the beginning. It looks like these are actual suits that the actors are wearing in camera. It kinda gives off Starset vibes, only more aquatic and grape-flavored, I guess. The action scenes are done pretty well and are a lot of fun. I particularly like the scenes of Aquaman stopping pirates from hijacking the submarine, the trench sequence, this part that feels like underwater Star Fox, Sea Fox if you will, the film's climax, which feels a little like underwater Star Wars mixed in with some kaiju fights, and the action set piece in Sicily. The funniest part of that last one is the fight where Aquaman and Black Manta end up breaking into an old lady's apartment, but she doesn't even react. Everyone seems to be running for their lives like most people would, but she's just kinda sitting there all like, what? Talk about a 2026 mood. And lastly, I'll give credit that the film is perfectly paced. You would think that because this film is 2.5 hours long that it would start to drag at certain points, but it really doesn't. It actually goes by pretty quickly. Overall, this movie is flawed, but still a lot of fun. Would I say this is the best DC Comics movie of all time? Not in a world where these films also exist, admittedly. But I have to give credit that they took something campy that seemed impossible to take seriously and actually turned it into something kinda cool, epic, and a lot of fun. It may not have very much to say thematically, but it's not really supposed to. It's just a basic turn your brain off and enjoy the action kind of flick. Cinematic fast food, I guess you could say. But as cinematic fast food goes, I'd say this is definitely either Taco Bell or Popeyes. In that I love how it tastes. I guess if you're not a fan of comic book movies or are looking for something that has more originality to it, you might not be into this. But if you're a diehard fan of comic book movies and just want to have some sea-themed fun, I'd say these waters are definitely worth diving into. Thank you guys for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like and subscribe for more vids, along with some shorts every now and then. And be sure to check out CineMaine's website, and be on the lookout for future CineMaine content.